I have a question for all the parents out there who have kids with autism, nonverbal, motor processing disorders, anything like that. My son just recently turned 2 at his 15-month checkup. Um, he had done like the autism like screening that they do, and if they get so many answers that kind of point towards like signs of autism, then they suggest you go get testing or whatever. And at that, my son had gotten like quite a few of those that kind of pointed towards like possibilities of autism. And his doctor was like very persistent, like, oh, are you sure he doesn't do this? Are you sure he doesn't do this? And was like trying to like coax him in the doctor's office to do these things, which he didn't. But I also had addressed a concern to her at the time. We had noticed that my son had been like talking, but he hadn't said as many words as they, ask you, or if they said this many words. And he had also kind of just stopped talking altogether for like a month. And at that point, he had just slowly started to say like one or two of the words that he had previously been saying. So she had suggested us work with this team of specialists that could come out and like evaluate him and work with him and all this stuff and kind of see where that went. And when they came out, one of the first things they did was test him for any sort of developmental delays, like educational delays, autism, all of those things. And they were really kind of concerned. I guess not concerned isn't the right word. They were kind of wondering if it wasn't autism, which was kind of where our mind was at. But through their program, it's not like when you go to get your kid tested for autism and you take them and they do like one test over the course of like an hour and then they're done. This is more of like over a week's time, and they come out and they see your kid and they evaluate your kid, and then they do like the same kind of testing, I guess, that they do when they test them for autism, and they kind of put that all together, and it's a group of people rather than just like one or two. It's one person for like every aspect. And so when he took that test, he passed. So they said that at the time they were not like saying that it was autism, but that they couldn't completely rule it out because of his age. But they said one of the biggest things that led them to kind of sway away from autism was the fact that to begin with, he was like very antisocial, but he had kind of started to become more social over that time. So like when they first started coming out, he didn't want anything to do with them. He wanted to stay super close to us, to where he got to where like now they come and he walks up to the door and greets them and starts trying to hand them toys and play with them or whatever. And so they said that they thought maybe he had a motor processing delay, basically meaning like in the process of thinking what he wanted to do and able to articulate it was very rough and sometimes hard. But the way they talk about it is kind of like over time and refining those things, it should get better. The trouble I'm having with that diagnosis is the way they explain it is that they're kind of supposed to get better over time. However, like he will learn words and use them frequently over a period of time and then just stop using them altogether. Like he used to have a whole handful of words that he would use, and then he just stopped, and then he'd have a few more words that he'd use, and he just stopped. And now he had got to where he was only saying go. That was the only word he would say, and he would say it when he wanted to go somewhere. He'd say it when he wanted you to go away. He'd say it, in every form that you can use the word go, but that was the only word. He has just recently started saying mama and dada, but not, it's more of like he's been watching Baby Shark, so he'll say it for the purpose of singing that song, and not for the purpose of talking to me or my husband. And other than that, like he doesn't say any of the other words that he used to say frequently. And then there are other things like the social aspect that they were talking about. So when they tested him and stuff, it was winter. He weren't really going anywhere, hanging out with anybody aside from like family that he's comfortable with. But I've noticed even then, like since it's been summer and stuff, and the kids are outdoors and all of this, when we go to the park, he doesn't play with the other kids, and other kids will come up to him and try to get him to play. And he's 2, so they're like, oh, a little baby, but he'll just stand there in the wood chips and just bring them up above his head and like sprinkle them, and then just laugh about it, like get all excited, and just do that over and over again. We were at the park the other day for almost an hour, and he spent the entire time doing that, just in different areas of the playground. And kids that came up to him, tried to get him to play. He wouldn't play. His siblings tried to get him to play. I tried to encourage him to go down the slides and play, and he wouldn't. We often go to my sister's house, and she's got, we have bounce houses and water slides and all of that over there, trampolines, and all the kids will be like playing, riding bikes, whatever, and he's just kind of off on his own, doing his own thing, or next to his dad and I. And if the kids come up to him and try to interact with him, like he'll laugh, play, whatever, but then he just normally kind of walks away and goes back to doing his own thing rather than playing and interacting with the other children. And my nephew, who is 6 weeks older than him, he is right there in the middle of all the kids, playing, like laughing, running around, trying to keep up with them. And my son is like complete opposite. And yes, I understand every kid is vastly different. My sister and I both have 3 boys. Our boys are all very close in age. The first 2 are 7 weeks apart, second 2 are 9 months apart, and our babies are 6 weeks apart. So we've seen like kids are very different. They grow at very different rates every time. But he acts a lot different in like social circumstances than any of our kids. And I have 4 children. She has 6. So he'll also do this thing where he like lines up toys he's playing with like this. If you look here, you can see he actually like lined them up, the 2 pigs, each one's facing an opposite direction, same with the horse. And then he only had 1 donkey and 1 bull, so he did those together, both facing opposite directions. Here's him once again lining up his toys, a different way this time. And his sharks. He also is very particular when he's playing, like when he is holding an animal that has a tail, he will only hold them by the tail. So if he's holding his shark, he'll hold the tail and hold it like long ways in front of him, or, whatever, but he'll have to hold it by the tail. Same with his Bluey characters and his farm animals and all of that. Like he holds them all the exact same way. And then like his Bluey characters can stand up or sit down, but he wants them to stand up. And if you set them down, he'll go back and make them all stand up. Sometimes he'll just like laugh about it or just pick them up and do it. Other times like he'll get frustrated because he doesn't want them sat down. He also used to do this like hand flapping motion like this, and then he got to where he kind of like do it in front of his face, and then he kind of went from that. He'll still do that occasionally, but now he'll take his toys and like when he's singing Baby Shark and he's holding one of his sharks, he'll put it like right in front of his face. And I'm not sure why that is, but he is very smart, and like some of the things that he does are very intentional. Like those farm animals, when they were like facing 2 different ways, like he intentionally did that. Or there was one day when I walked in, and all of those examples that I showed were just from today. The other day I walked in there and he had like 3 farm animals, and each one of them were like facing inward, and it like their bodies made like a triangle almost because he had their heads going in together. All very intentional. He is so smart. But he was also kind of delayed when it came to his motor skills as a baby. Like I thought he was not gonna crawl. He did everything. Like he was rolling, he was crawling backwards, he was doing everything prior to crawling. He didn't start like walking either on his own until he was like 14 months. So I guess my question is, when did your child get the diagnosis? What was your signs? Like, does this sound like autism or not? Like, should I get tested now? Should I wait until he's a little bit older